You know, there are nights when you just want to get home, wash your face, and let the world leave you alone. This wasn't one of those nights. Picture me 3:00 a.m., just leaving the hospital after sitting with my mom. Yeah, the cancer isn't going away. My eyes are still red. Shirt smells like antiseptic and vending machine coffee. And as I pull up to my driveway, what do I see? Some Botoxed suburban nightmare in Chanel sunglasses standing there in my headlights, literally cutting my gate in half with bolt cutters, no joke. She hops out of a brand new white Escalade with two mall cops behind her like she's rolling deep, flashes me this smug grin and goes, "Marcus, you owe the HOA $320 in back fees. Pay now or we slap a lien on your house by Monday." That's how my day ended. How was yours? I just stood there blinking through the exhaustion. "Ma'am, I'm not in your HOA." She actually laughed, like I was a child who'd said something adorably wrong. "Sweetie, every house on this street is ours now, easy way or the hard way." And I don't know what hit me. Maybe pure exhaustion, maybe just the absurdity of it all. But I smiled, walked inside, and came back with a piece of paper. The look on her face went from power pink to sheet white in about 3 seconds flat. "You want to know how we got here? Grab a coffee. My name is Marcus Hendris, 58 years old. After 20 years in Army logistics, yeah, I got out when I realized nobody at the Pentagon actually knows what they're doing. I inherited this place from my Uncle Ray. 2.5 acres at the dead end of Maple Ridge Drive. The house Ray built in '87, my workshop. And a small guest cabin I keep for veteran buddies who land on hard times. Uncle Ray paid cash for everything. Never signed anything he didn't fully understand. Had a distrust of politicians so deep, I'm pretty sure it was genetic. And now here, I was staring down Delilah Whitmore. Everything wrong with suburbia wrapped in one well-pressed package. HOA president for 8 years, driving that white Escalade like she's the mayor, acting like she personally invented community standards. My property sits on the other side of a creek, surrounded by oak trees. You cross a small bridge just to reach my driveway. Uncle Ray always said, "If you're going to build a kingdom, put up a moat." He did. None of that stopped Delilah. She'd been in my driveway waving paperwork and rattling off violations. Your uncle agreed to voluntary inclusion in 1994. Properly filed with the county, sweetie. I could taste the stress rising in my throat. Ray would have burned this place to the ground before joining an HOA. Whether your uncle appreciated community standards or not, you're part of our association now. We maintain property values. We ensure the right kind of people live here. The right kind of people. There it was, the phrase that always crawls out eventually. The one that says, "If you don't look, talk, or work like us, you don't belong here." "What's wrong with my property?" I asked. She aimed her manicure at my workshop. Unpermitted structures, fire hazards, unsightly storage. She fanned out freshly. Printed violation notices. 4 years of back fees. Somehow the total had climbed from $320 to $4,200 in the 5 minutes since my driveway. Apparently math gets creative when there's a Chanel purse involved. I kept my voice level. "Show me the actual documentation." She handed me her business card, smelled like a migraine, and told me payment was due Friday or lien proceedings started Monday. Then her Escalade rolled back down my driveway, dust settling like a slow curse. I smiled for the first time. That whole night, she just picked a fight with a tired, grieving veteran who has nothing but time and a deep, bone-level hatred for bullies. Monday morning, I was at the county clerk's office. Smells like old coffee and older dreams. I need the deed for 247 Maple Ridge Drive. The clerk pulled the file, handed it over. Not a single word about any HOA. Clean as the day Ray bought it. Then I asked for the HOA formation documents. The Maple Ridge Homeowners Association didn't exist until 1991. Uncle Ray built his place in 1987. You cannot make someone join a club when they owned the field before the clubhouse was even a thought. Pretty simple. I was feeling good on the drive home until I found Delilah back in my driveway with a teenager in a security uniform. Mandatory compliance inspection. She brandished the clipboard like a weapon. "This is Chad, our certified enforcement officer." Chad looked about as threatening as a golden retriever in a necktie. "Ma'am, you have zero authority to inspect my property." She ignored me and started snapping photos, calling out violations. Fire hazards, commercial activity, a $500 inspection fee tacked on for the inconvenience of showing up uninvited. While they poked around, I called the county planning office. 3 minutes later, they confirmed every structure on the property was properly permitted. Even the tool shed, and then I spotted it. Delilah gesturing proudly at her designer fence running along what she apparently considered the property line. Something clicked. I went and found Uncle Ray's original survey documents. Her fence sat 15 feet onto my land. You ever have one of those moments where the paperwork in your hand feels more powerful than anything else you own? That was me. When Delilah came back from her photo tour, I complimented her on the fence. Nice craftsmanship. She blinked. "What does my fence have to do with your violations?" "Oh, nothing," I said. "Just admiring it." Then I made it official. Certified letter, 30 days to remove the encroachment, or I'd consider the structure abandoned property. Friday morning, a city code enforcement officer named Rodriguez showed up. Former military bearing, the way he carried himself. He had a stack of anonymous complaints thick as a phone book, noise, unlicensed contracting, safety hazards. I could practically smell Delilah's perfume on the paperwork. I walked him through the workshop. He ran a hand along my 1952 Craftsman drill press and went quiet for a moment. My dad had one just like this. He looked at me directly. "Between you and me, these anonymous complaint campaigns always target the same people. Veterans, elderly residents, anyone who might not know how to fight back." I started digging. Delilah's real estate license had been suspended 2 years prior. Her husband's mortgage company was under investigation for fraud. Court records showed they owed $85,000 in back taxes. Suddenly, all that HOA fee desperation made a lot more sense. Delilah called an emergency neighborhood meeting. The room smelled like burned coffee and stale donuts. She'd put together a PowerPoint. Red circles around every outbuilding on my property, my workshop, Ray's old fishing cabin, my firewood pile. Even my American flag got a circle. Neighborhood blight, she called it. Mrs. Patterson, 87 years old, sharp as a tack, stood up immediately. "You mean Marcus? The man who fixed my porch steps for free?" "That's exactly the problem." Delilah snapped. Jake spoke up. "He rebuilt my deck after the storm, wouldn't take a dime." Delilah's practiced smile started showing cracks. I stood up. "Mrs. Whitmore, perhaps you should focus on removing your illegal fence from my property before lecturing anyone about standards." I put the survey report on the projector. Her fence, 15 feet into my yard. The room went quiet, then started buzzing. Her husband looked like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. That's impossible," she said. "Well," I said, "either your installer can't read a survey or someone's been lying. One of those is fixable." The next day, Deputy Collins served me a restraining order. Delilah claimed I'd threatened her at the meeting. Collins looked genuinely apologetic. "Just doing my job." The order meant I couldn't contact the HOA while she kept the pressure on. So I did what any soldier does, called for backup. I tracked down Uncle Ray's original attorney, Frank Morrison. Frank dug through his files and called me back the following afternoon. Ray negotiated a permanent property exclusion agreement when this development was first planned. The developer owed him $50,000 from a prior deal. They settled by excluding his land from any HOA jurisdiction forever, and Marcus, every attempted enforcement triggers a $10,000 penalty clause. 23 violations. That was $230,000 to $30,000 around. That same time, my mailbox got flattened, on camera, of course. White Escalade, 11:47 a.m. Then someone broke into my workshop and took about $2,000 in tools. Grandpa's hand planes, Uncle Ray's socket set, gone. Rodriguez told me to document everything. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Mrs. Patterson came by with tuna casserole and intelligence. Delilah was running a campaign to paint. Me as an unstable veteran. "Marcus is the best neighbor I've had in 40 years, she said, eyes sharp. "If she keeps this up, I'll make sure every person on this street knows exactly what kind of person she is." She wasn't the only one getting targeted. Everyone who'd spoken up for me at that meeting started receiving violation notices. Jake's basketball hoop was an eyesore. Tom's service dog barked too much. Delilah was working through the list methodically. Mrs. Patterson also mentioned the Whitmores were 3 months behind on their mortgage, and the Escalade had nearly been repossessed. Desperate people, desperate moves. My insurance adjuster, Greg Hamilton, confirmed what I was starting to suspect. He'd seen a pattern across a dozen similar cases in 3 counties, always following HOA harassment campaigns. Fake insurance claims for non-existent foundation damage traced back to the same source. Fraud, organized and deliberate. Frank called with the full accounting. Based on the documented violations, the penalty clause totaled $230,000, and if enforcement continued, the entire HOA's formation could be invalidated. I set up the finale. FBI agent Sarah Walsh would attend the next community meeting as a new resident interested in the neighborhood. Frank wired me up. David Whitmore, Delilah's husband, approached me beforehand and offered $30,000 in cash to keep quiet. He admitted to mortgage fraud, confirmed they'd collected $50,000 from residents they'd pressured out. I played along and recorded every word. Saturday night, the meeting was packed. Half the county showed up. Delilah launched her PowerPoint, red circles, forged documents, the whole production. Agent Walsh asked to see the original HOA paperwork. Delilah hedged and deflected. I stood up, connected my laptop, and put Uncle Ray's exclusion agreement on the screen. Original signature, county seal, everything. The document you just saw from the HOA, forgery, every violation they filed against me, $230,000 in penalties. I clicked to the next slide. David's voice, clear and unmistakable, offering me hush money and confessing to fraud. Agent Walsh's badge came out. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, you're under arrest for wire fraud, extortion, and racketeering." The handcuffs clicked. Mrs. Patterson started clapping. Then the whole room was on its feet. 6 months later, my workshop smells like fresh cedar and purpose. The Veterans Therapeutic Woodworking program I started has 23 participants and a waiting list. Mrs. Patterson volunteers twice a week. Jake builds birdhouses. Tom trains service dogs. We use Delilah's old violation notices as kindling at the neighborhood barbecue. Their house sold at auction. Mrs. Patterson bought it, mostly out of spite, she'll admit freely. The Whitmore case blew the lid off HOA fraud patterns in 4 states. New legislation passed. Mandatory background checks for board members, financial transparency requirements, criminal penalties for fraudulent enforcement. My settlement funded a scholarship program for veterans' families, named in honor of my mom, who always said education was the one thing nobody could ever take from you. The first recipient was a Navy veteran working toward her nursing degree. Funny thing about bullies, they always believe they're untouchable, right up until the moment the whole neighborhood stops letting them be. The smell of coffee and sawdust fills my mornings now. Every new project, every person learning to hold a hammer for the first time, feels like a small piece of something being set right. So here's my question for you. Where do you draw the line? When does protecting your own home become a fight? For your whole community? Drop your own story below. Your HOA nightmare, your bully encounter, the moment you finally decided enough was enough. I read everyone. Because sometimes the most important thing isn't the paperwork or the legal penalty clause. It's realizing you were never actually alone. You just hadn't found the rest of your neighborhood yet.